Greetings, everyone. This is Richard Solomon. Welcome to Taking Care of Business. Today's show ponders the question, why won't my medical insurance cover this? So that's the title of the show. And with us, we have four special guests. We have Rick, we have Joanne, we have Jason, and we have Emily. Thank you all for being on the show. And let's really look at this issue. So I guess let's start with Jason and Emily. You have a particular situation that's quite troubling. Why don't you share it with all of our listeners out there?
Go ahead.
Sure. We have a 14-year-old son with severe scoliosis, and we've been managing him medically with a brace for about 3 years. And the curve progressed despite our son wearing the brace. And about summer of this year, this past year, 2016, the orthopedic spinal doc who's been monitoring him said it's time for surgery. We had been planning on having surgery when our son Nate was done growing, about 17, 18. But the curve got so bad that they needed to do surgery pretty quickly. It's actually scheduled for a couple weeks. But
What kind of surgery are they talking about? What would the surgery entail?
Well, they're talking about a spinal straightening surgery where they go in and correct the curve. There's two ways that can be done. The traditional way is with a spinal fusion. In the case of my son, it would be fusing most of his spine with titanium rods and then placing a bone graft across the vertebrae in the spine so that there's no longer a flexible spine, but just one stiff column of bone and titanium. That has been the standard for a long time. However, we're going to have another procedure, which is a newer procedure. It's called anterior scoliosis correction, and it involves placing a flexible cable on the curved side of the spine and tightening that cable to straighten the spine without fusing it. So the benefit being that it's motion sparing and muscle sparing. They can a child who has this kind of scoliosis correction still has full range of motion, and more importantly, they'll still be able to grow. Once the spine is fused with rods, it no longer will grow. So the surgery that we're electing to have will allow our son to grow and move, basically.
Now, where do you plan on having, not specifically, but what locale are you planning on having the surgery?
Well, we live in Arizona, but the surgery is going to be done in New York at Mount Sinai Hospital. And the reason for that is there's not many surgeons available who are trained in this procedure. And further than that, the ones who are trained, many of them cannot handle a curve as severe as our son's curve. He's got an 86-degree curve in his spine. And so it's a technical surgery, basically. We had consultations with 3 spinal surgeons here in Phoenix. We drove to San Diego, had a consultation there, and nobody could do it until we found this surgical group in New York who, as it turns out, are part of a core of surgeons who really created this procedure and brought it to the forefront.
Well, there's nothing like talking to the inventors. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
Yeah, right.
It's sort of like, what do you know about this? And it's like, well, I wrote the book. So, so that puts you in really good hands.
Yeah.
So
they're very experienced.
So with that, did there come a problem in sort of the whole insurance coverage and whatever that's associated with this procedure?
Yeah, there's a problem. The problem is because it's a newer procedure, our insurance company has declined to cover it. And we've been back and forth. Another mitigating factor is the surgeon is out of network. Although we do have coverage for out of network doctors, they're still not going to cover it because the standard procedure is considered spinal fusion. So the insurance company doesn't care if that's the best procedure for a child. They only want to cover one procedure, and it's a 40-year-old procedure. There's never been an advancement until 10 years ago. And one of the main reasons that we don't want our son to have his spine fused is because of the problems that will arise that we were informed of later in life, namely the discs in his spine below and above the fusion will degenerate. So basically, he could be walking around, with no other choice but to take pain pills because his discs have blown out below the fusion or above it, when he's 30, 40 years old.
Wow. And that's not that really, in the grand scheme of things, that's really not that far into the future when you think about it. It's not right. Right. It's not like you say, well, when you hit 90,
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So it's a risk, and, we didn't want to have that risk for him.
So let me bring into the conversation Rick. Rick is an attorney and quite a good one. And you've handled insurance coverage issues as an attorney. Could you give me your thoughts on all of this?
Well, one of the reasons you buy insurance, whether it's medical insurance, automobile insurance, is when something happens and you need to have something taken care of, it gets paid for. And that's the whole concept behind insurance. Emily and Jason are paying, I'm sure, large premiums to cover themselves and their children for health insurance purposes, and when there's a need that arises, and they, like millions of other families in the United States, are paying all this money into insurance companies so that those individuals, when the need arises, get coverage and get their bills paid. It's just like if you have a car crash and you need to get your car fixed and you have insurance coverage for that collision, then your car gets fixed. Now, some people may not need insurance coverage for a year, 2 years, or 10 years, but they might need it down the road. And that whole idea of you pool money into an insurance company so that when there's a need that arises, everyone gets covered because we've all been paying premiums throughout all the years that we've had health insurance coverage. So it sounds fundamentally unfair that you put in all this money into premiums, and then when the need arises, the insurance company seems to look for every which way to deny coverage.
Right.
And from what Jason's saying, it sounds as if this newer procedure actually is the more advanced procedure that will reduce the healthcare costs to Nate in the long run and save the insurance company and Jason and Emily money over the long run. So you would think they should cover the newer procedure that's going to give him better health than the older procedure that's becoming quickly outdated.
Let's ask about a policy thing here. For example, I've seen in the medical field, though, in the medical insurance field, the insurance company will cover your first colonoscopy at 50. But then, as most people have polyps, they will say, you see, your second, third, fourth, and fifth or subsequent colonoscopies are diagnostic colonoscopies, and therefore they're not covered like a screening. So all of a sudden you hit with a giant copay. And what I've seen is, as a lawyer, lots of people call up and say, wait a second, I never seem to meet the deductible. I have never-ending copays. I make a copay at a doctor or some kind of medical facility. Then I get a bill for more copays. And then when I submit it to the insurance company, I haven't met my annual deductible. And yet every year my premiums keep going up, and they don't go up 2%, 3%. They go up 18 to 25%, each year. And people have to cut back on the kind of coverage they get. So they keep paying more and getting less and less and less. Is that a trend that you've seen as a lawyer, and have you experienced that in your, just day-to-day goings on?
Well, I've seen it in my practice because in our own health insurance, whenever we're trying to see how do we cover the cost of health insurance, one of the ways to keep the costs from going up is to have a higher deductible. That's always a trade-off. How high do you want a deductible versus your premiums? So there's no question that the health insurance costs keep rising, and there's always an effort on the part of who's ever paying the policies to try to keep the premiums low. But when it gets to, fundamental health care, things such as, the need for surgery and preventive diagnostic tests, you would think that those things should have some overriding consideration where even the deductible isn't something that has to be met, because those are, critical health care issues rather than elective type of issues.
Okay, Joanne, you've seen this from the insurance company's point of view. Could you share some of your thoughts and experiences?
I have, and what Rick is saying, is very true. And on the insurance end, let me just say that I saw a lot of things that I didn't know existed. For example, the marketing department of the insurance company would always cater to the larger groups. So we used to have a joke, because I worked in a claim review department for people who had claims denied, and I would basically try to put together a case and put it before the review committee. But we would laugh and say, if it's company X who brings in a lot of money to the insurance company, they'll pay for a hangnail. If it's somebody who, if it's a very small group or individual payers, they're going to try to deny everything in every which way because they don't really care if they lose you.
Hence the rejections for the TCB radio group.
Well, yeah, pretty much. So I would basically have to put together a review for all the doctors to look at within the company, and pretty much I have to say, being a consumer myself, I was always in favor of the customer, trying to, basically help them get their claim paid. And it is true that they want to save money. They say they're nonprofit, but they will look for every angle to not pay a claim. So if for example, in Jason's situation, back when I worked for the insurance company, if they denied an out-of-plan claim, I would have to put together, a report that basically said there's no one else within their plan who can do this particular surgery, and try to write it up so that the company would sort of be almost forced to say, okay, well, we're going to pay for the claim because nobody in plan can do it. But now in Jason's situation, he's saying they're also saying that it's too new of a procedure, or maybe they're going to call it experimental, whatever angle they can look for, they will. So they can try to fight this, but if Jason isn't with a large group, the insurance company may think they don't really have much pressure coming on their behalf from, say, a large group who they don't want to lose coverage with.
All right, so we are flying through radio. This is Taking Care of Business with Richard Solomon. I have very special guests. We're talking about why doesn't my medical insurance cover this? This is really something important to everybody out there. When we come back from the break, I want everybody to grab a pen, and I want them to take a look at GoFundMe.com, Nate's-surgery. But we'll be right back to discuss this in more detail and to see how people can address this in their own particular situations. Keep it locked in. We'll be right back.
What I really need, some kind of affection. All that I have is this mental infection.
All right, Richard Solomon, welcome back to Taking Care of Business. We are with Jason, Emily, Rick, and Joanne, and we're talking about medical insurance coverage and its limitations and really being there when you need to because of, to use an old phrase, voodoo economics. Let's actually talk about that for a second. Jason, can you kind of go through some of the moving math that they put you through?
Sure. So, well, if you look at our insurance card, it says that we have a $5,000 deductible. And
which is typical.
That's what we went off.
Yeah, which is ordinary, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I called to verify that as we were going through scheduling the surgery, and they said, yeah, you do, and you also have an out-of-pocket maximum of $8,000. So, and they lump those two together. They're not inclusive of each other. So we really have, $8,000 plus $5,000.
And then there's more, right?
Right. When it actually came time and the surgeon submitted for authorization with our insurance, they said, well, your doctor's out of network, so actually now your deductible is higher because it's not a network deductible. It's actually, all told, $31,000. So, and then because he's out of network, they're giving us a co-insurance of 50%. And so our costs for the surgery are very high. They're going to be, we were given a range between $81,000 and $104,000 out of pocket.
And that doesn't include, I guess, rehab, medicine, and other things that would be later down the road.
Right. It doesn't include any of that.
Or
Right,
the
so
hospitalization, right?
That's just for the surgery and whatever accompanies the surgery.
Yes.
So,
Right.
So potentially you're talking about a lot more additional money down the road.
That's correct.
And there's a question mark on that as to how and what will be covered, I assume.
There is.
Okay. So did you do something with the insurance company to either appeal or, do something that says, hey, this is kind of heavy considering I pay a lot of money for a premium, and it seems a little unfair that the goalposts and the walls keep moving every time I talk to you.
Right. No, we absolutely did. I mean, we were pretty upset. We called and had to make several calls to even really get to anybody who could help us because they kind of tranced you in circles. But what they ultimately said is you can appeal, but you're not part of a group plan. You're an individual. So they said we don't really even have to hear your appeal. You can appeal, but we're not obligated to really do anything.
Wow.
It's basically what they told me.
Your call is very important to us. Please,
Yeah, right.
Please, your estimated waiting time is 10,000 minutes.
Right.
Then when you find a number, they transfer you to some other number.
Right, which transfers you to a busy signal, and then you have to start over. Yeah, I've had that.
Yeah.
Right. So it kind of
nightmare.
It goes back to what Joanne said. I mean, if you're part of a large group and you're covered by insurance from a big company like Microsoft, you've got some ability to appeal. But if you're a mom and pop, grocery store or whatever, you're kind of out of luck.
Right. And yet the foundation of America is the small business person, the mom and pop.
Right.
That's supposedly
Absolutely.
what makes America great, is that we have all these entrepreneurs who take time and effort and sweat equity, start businesses, whether it's a little gym or a little real estate company or a little construction business or whatever it is, or repair, whatever it is, web design, you name it. And that comprises millions of people across this country who are sometimes at least self-employed and sometimes employing others, either part-time, full-time, but that creates a lot of jobs. And yet there's a punishment for being an entrepreneur. In fact, it is like, I saw this expression the other day: a fine is a punishment for doing something wrong, and a tax is a punishment for doing something right. So,
Exactly.
so you're both being fined and taxed.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah, sure feels that way.
Did Jason and Emily, did you look at any legal remedies outside the internal appeal system?
We contacted a few insurance specialists who kind of said, well, you can appeal, and yes, because you're an individual, you have limited options. They just pretty much verified what we had been told.
And we've tried to join group plans, but they're very limited to us in the state of Arizona for whatever reason.
So does this basically support the argument that we should eliminate borders when it comes to insurance so that people can shop almost?
Yes.
I'm thinking.
I think it does. I mean, I think, some healthy competition would force these companies to kind of be a little more favorable to people.
Well, one thing I have noticed is that the number of insurers per jurisdiction seems to be getting smaller. Because I remember like a long time ago, like Mutual of Omaha used to have medical insurance in New York. I think they pulled out. And I can't remember all the others, but it seems like the number of carriers that actually work in any particular jurisdiction keeps getting smaller and smaller. I know I think, Rick, in the term of in workers' comp, which is not really the same, but it's analogous, aren't there the smallest number of insurers than there were maybe compared to like 40, 50 years ago?
Well, certainly there's a lot less insurance companies than there used to be, and oftentimes they're consolidating and one's buying another one and that sort of thing. And, what the solution to some of these issues are about, insurance companies, basically trying to cherry pick who they're going to insure. Ultimately, when we look at the entire United States or even state by state, we know that there's great resources, there's great doctors. We have a lot of money put into the medical business and industry. And ultimately, when it gets down to it, you look at a family like Jason and Emily and their children, and here it is, a cost to help their child get through adolescence without being essentially physically crippled, could bankrupt them. And, that is just not right in the United States.
No,
we have too many resources to allow families to essentially become bankrupt or abandon necessary medical care for their children as they're trying to reach adulthood without being essentially crippled. So something's wrong. I don't have the exact answer, but there should be a solution to those types of issues.
It really is unconscionable. So basically what the insurance companies is doing is really forcing people to either forego treatment or find a way to pay for it themselves.
Yeah. Yep.
All right. So that leads me to...
That's right.
Right. So since you're not willing to forego it, nor would I, so you chose the second route, which is to go to a broader community appeal. Let's talk about that. Who was the initiator of the GoFundMe.com idea?
I will raise my hand for that.
On radio, we can do that. On radio, we can do that. I recognize the person in the back of the auditorium. Okay, so Joanne, so this was your idea. So
it was my idea.
All right, so
yes.
You were having a bowl of cereal one morning, and the lightning hit.
I listened to what they had to say. Jason and Emily said was going on, and it was one of those situations where you feel compelled to do something, and I thought, okay, I know there's GoFundMe's that I've contributed to, and maybe this is an avenue that may be able to bring some assistance to them and help them offset some of the burden of the cost. And so we got it up and running, and it's been moving. We've been getting donations. I put it up there for an amount that I thought maybe would cover at least the surgeon's bill for $80,000, and right now we've got about $10,000 raised.
All right, so we need to have people out there who are listening to this to really look at it. So it's GoFundMe.com/Nate-surgery. Let me ask you, how does one go about doing a GoFundMe site? I've never I've seen them, but only from the viewer point of view, and not as the creator point of view. How did that work? What does it entail, and how do you register that?
I had no idea what I was doing. I just typed in GoFundMe and followed it. They make it pretty easy. I just followed all the prompts. And the instructions are kind of right there as you page along through the GoFundMe site. So I just Googled it, GoFundMe, and then it it just asks you questions and then prompts you what to do. And it couldn't have been easier. They make it that way. So it wasn't based on my good knowledge of how to do those things at all.
Now, do you see the progress? Can people donate anonymously? How does all? I want to learn a little bit about.
People can donate anonymously. They can use their name. They give options for all that. In fact, I just donated myself to a GoFundMe that a friend of mine sent me for something, and that's pretty much how it goes. You put in the amount you want to donate, and then they ask you for your credit card. Do you want your name? Do you want to be anonymous? And it's done.
So you decided to go for $80,000?
Yeah. Yep. With the hope that maybe if we had raised enough for the surgeon's bill, at least it would help out. I don't know if the hospitalization will be covered. I don't know about any of those costs, but so we just, I just sort of aimed for the surgeon's fee.
Now, when you write your story, I assume on GoFundMe you write a story. What did you say as part of your content?
I talked about. I'm trying to remember what I even said. I think initially I made it really simple that we needed help, with this advanced scoliosis surgery. And then I made it simple in the beginning, and then they give you an option to do updates. And the more I thought about it, I thought, I should really add more to it so that people understand that why this procedure is being denied. And so I did several updates to explain it a little further. And also GoFundMe will give you the option of continuing to update or, add something new each day to sort of, get more, bring the story to life again. Because they say people forget, and you sort of want to keep it alive in people's minds.
Now, could you put links to either websites as part of your updates? I
have it on my Facebook, and I have asked friends to put it on their Facebook so that it would reach more people, like a wider audience.
Right, but what I'm asking is, if you go to the GoFundMe site, can you link it there to something external so they can get more information than what's maybe on GoFundMe?
I don't think that was an option, but
Okay.
Once you get on the GoFundMe site, I believe that you can click on updates that I've added so people can continue to read more about it. It would be nice if I could link it to some of the work that, for example, Sinai Hospital in Philadelphia has done, or the doctors in New York, because they explain the procedure a lot more thoroughly. I'll have to look into that and see if there's a way I might be able to do that.
Right, because I was thinking along those lines that maybe if you went to like the textbook or the articles or the surgeon's home pages, you could actually see as a viewer, these are the people who are going to be performing the operation. This is the picture of the operation. Because in medicine now, because of the internet, you could actually see the before and after pictures. You can see CT and other kinds of scans. And you can actually see short videos of certain kinds of procedures. Like just say, like, for example, you want to look up, I don't know, a broken wrist repair or something, who knows, or carpal tunnel release. And they'll show you what the actual surgery looks like. So people who are maybe not familiar with the process can see it visually. And truthfully, the visual representation really helps people understand what's at stake.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know? Yeah.
I saw that myself. I saw a picture of a traditional, of a young person, an adolescent, who had the traditional fusion surgery, and just showing how they went in posterior and the scar going up their back, and versus the anterior approach, this newer tethering procedure where there were only, a couple of small incisions made along the side. And the recovery period, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Jason and Emily, but I think the posterior, the original standard procedure is about 6 months of recovery, and then we know, down the road all the problems. But I think the anterior is about 6 weeks, from what I've read.
6 to 9 weeks.
Yeah. Yep. So it's a huge difference. Some kids return to school after 4 weeks after this. So, I mean, it's night and day.
Well, it's like...
With the fusion... I was going to say, with the fusion... Sorry, go ahead.
It kind of reminds me of the advances in heart surgery, where they used to do the, breaking of the sternum and the whole bit, where now they do sort of, the lesser invasive procedures. So, medicine's moving along, and I guess the insurance industry really hasn't moved along with it.
That's so true and sad. Yep.
Jason, I cut you off. I'm sorry. What were you going to say?
Oh, that's okay. Oh, I was just going to add that with the fusion, as Joanne said, the recovery is a 6 to 9 month recovery, and as Emily said, much shorter with the anterior scoliosis correction. So, a lot of advantages.
Right, and as a 14-year-old, 9 months is really a long time to be out of bed. Just to be sidelined.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah. So,
and he's starting high school in the fall, which is even more reason.
Yeah. So there's no time like the present. All right. Speaking of no time like the present, we have just flying through this episode here. This is Richard Solomon. You're listening to Taking Care of Business. We're talking about why does my medical insurance not cover this procedure? And we have 4 very important guests from different perspectives. And you can catch this on YouTube and other places, the Public Radio Exchange and the like. And if you want to learn more about Nate Surgery, you can go visit gofundme.com/Nate's-surgery. We'll be back right after this. Please keep it on Taking Care of Business. We'll be right back.
Some kind of affection.
Welcome back to Taking Care of Business with your host, Richard Solomon, and my very, very special guest, Attorney Rick, Joanne, who has an insurance perspective, Jason and Emily, who have a son who's got a medical condition that's not being covered by their insurance. And this is a story really of nationwide significance for all people out there. At some point, we all face the issue of our medical insurance carriers not willing to cover things that are medically important and necessary. And we have people who are more like accountants and bookkeepers than doctors and health advocates deciding our fate. And that's really just heart-wrenching. So speaking of heart-wrenching, to the two moms in the discussion, Joanne and Emily, your moms, as moms, this has got to be pulling at your heart. Let's start with Joanne. As a mom and someone who's been on the insurance side of this, looking at it, you must have tremendous empathy for the moms of children in this kind of situation.
No question. It's very difficult, and I mean, not just as a mom, but as a parent. But I mean, you think about, moms, you give birth, you're the one who's usually up all night nursing and up and down all night with your child, and those feelings of protection and wanting to take care of your child don't leave as they grow. You never lose those feelings. And, when your child's sick, you wish it was you who were sick. You'd rather be hurt or ill 10 times more than you want to see your child hurting. So if your child can have a medical procedure that is going to help them get through life in a healthier way, in a pain-free way, and enhance the rest of their life, in Jason and Emily's case, there's the potential that this could really hurt them financially, but you're willing to do whatever you have to. Your child comes first. What do you give up? You give up anything for your child. Mm-hmm. I remember working on a claim at the insurance company for some parents whose daughter had some emotional problems. She was away at school, and they incurred thousands of dollars in a claim for something that was the insurance company was calling out of plan, and she failed to call her doctor here in Buffalo first and get permission to go to the emergency room. It was just this crazy denial. And they were from a small group. There wasn't leverage from, the larger group. So I wrote up their file, and eventually I helped them and worked hard to get this claim paid. I'm telling you, these parents were beside themselves. They sent me flowers every week for a month. They came to the company crying to meet me, and all I kept thinking is, and I said to them, I'm a parent. I would want somebody to fight for me if I was in a situation like this, because you'd do anything for your child.
So, Emily, here you have the exasperating situation of, limited finances because none of us have 50-foot yachts or 100-foot yachts and a boat and a seaplane and a helicopter.
No, not yet.
Yeah. So here you are faced with, difficult choices. All of us live within budgets. All of us only have so much money. And these are extraordinary expenses. So how do you reconcile this? And in many ways, it's actually a blessing that GoFundMe is even an avenue, because, I guess years ago, how would you even get the rallying cry out to the larger community?
Well, honestly, I'm watching my son grow into a very handsome young man. I'm watching him struggle with his self-esteem because of his spine and because of his back. It's hard enough being a teenager these days, and then to have something, a spine deformity where you don't even want to take your shirt off when you go to the beach or whatever. I'd do anything to take that away. And that's the reality of it. And I know Jason feels the same way. And do we want a scar up and down his spine that's going to be with him for the rest of his life? No. Do we want him stiff so he can't move like the Tin Man? No. So for us, upon doing research, this was our only choice and our only consideration for our guy. We just want the world for him. And,
And you get the cold shoulder from the insurance company, right?
Yeah.
And I'm sure you've sent pictures and have talked to them heartfelt, and all you get is sort of like, the big time brush off.
Yep. It's shocking. It's just, it's appalling. It's shocking. I never was affected by this kind of thing in my life ever. I mean, I've got scoliosis. That's why Nate has it. It's heredity from me. But mine never got as bad. And I'm just absolutely floored at the fact that, these insurance companies aren't realizing that what they've been doing for 30 years is not working. And there's this new procedure. It's got a proven track record, and it's not, for whatever reason, being covered. And it's heartbreaking.
So how do we, for the panel out there, how do we get the word out, not only just for the GoFundMe, which is really, really important, GoFundMe.com, Nate's-surgery, but what can people do to exert pressure on the local and national levels, to insurance companies, to maybe to the doctors, to really push the insurance companies that this is just morally as well as medically wrong and regressive in terms of societal benefits. You want a healthy, productive society. You actually save more money. Mm-hmm. You save more money by having a healthier society. There are people who criticize the insurance industry as an insurance they'll only insure sickness but not prevention, and yet prevention is always much cheaper. It's cheaper to put Rich Solomon in the gym than it is to, unblock things, So, but yet they'll only pay, they won't pay for the gym. Now I'm just kind of using that facetiously, but in many ways, they won't pay for you to brush your teeth, but they will pay for the extraction of the bad tooth. And that's much more money. And the brushing of the teeth is infinitely smaller. So what can we do to re-educate everyone out there, especially because it makes no sense that on a broad level, everyone's going to be affected by this sooner or later. So you can only kick the can down the road so long before it reverberates back to people who are themselves insurers and doctors and things like that. And they're going to be faced with this quandary too. So what is the rallying cry? What could we do as people who are upset by this? What can we do?
One of the things we know is there's been some progress. Some of the laws now, or the law now, is you can't exclude individuals with pre-existing conditions from getting into a new health care plan or health insurance plan. But we need the people who make the laws in each state, as well as on a national level, to recognize that there's more than enough medical services available out there. We have hospitals, we have great doctors, we have great imaging machines and companies to diagnose these conditions. And so this isn't a lack of resources when it comes to having proper medical personnel and treatment facilities. What this is simply insurance companies trying to get out of paying for necessary procedures. So we need the policymakers and the lawmakers to write additional laws and rules and regulations that will prevent insurance companies from using some of these schemes that we've seen in this case with Nate's scoliosis and his need for surgery, saying things like, well, it's out of network. Well, the world's growing smaller. And if you don't have the surgeons in one particular area who can perform the necessary surgery and you have to go to another area, so be it. You have to cover it. And we need laws and rules and regulations that will impose those kinds of things. And we need to do that by writing our Congress people, our state and local governmental officials, and things just like happening in this case, GoFundMe, because the more people who know about it, the more they're going to be talking to policymakers and politicians who make these rules and regulations and laws.
Right, and to some extent, we probably need legal challenges as well. And maybe some group or will start bringing class actions. And for all the class action attorneys out there and all the other people who are of the legal mind that, litigation may be important, to really start getting this some headlines, I encourage all of you out there to actually pick up the torch on this one. There's lots of class actions for all kinds of stuff, but something like this is really the special interest of all of us as Americans and as people who pay the bills. We're all paying the bills, and yet what you don't want to do is go to a diner. And then you say, I want to buy $1 worth of food, and they give you 20 cents of food. See, that bothers everybody, right? That analogy hits home. I gave you $1, and yet I'm only getting 2 pieces of gum. I expected, a bagel with toast, and a little bit of butter. And all I got was 2 pieces of gum. And yet that's what's happening here. So we need people to be...
There's imbalance in the power system here. It's the consumers against the big insurance companies, and the insurance companies hold the power.
But there's more of us.
The power needs to be shifted.
But there's more of us, and we need to, for all of those
make noise.
Yeah. So to some extent, to the extent that this particular show can be a rallying point, I ask the people who are listening, and we'll post this in different places, spread this out there, because this is truly a national issue of tremendous importance that's not going to really change for a long period of time. So people really need to go out there and be proactive and call your insurance company, get on the insurance card and call the customer thing and start giving them lip. Even if you have to wait 25 minutes on hold, we have to start complaining and exerting pressure, getting the word out. We need to get maybe op-ed articles and things in local newspapers and maybe newspapers of larger circulation and say, what are the important issues? And this is really one of the most important issues in my mind, because this affects everybody. We all want certain things. We all want clean air. We all want clean water, and we want healthcare coverage that when we pay for it, when we give them $1, we don't get back, 18 cents of coverage.
Right.
Yep.
Very true.
And I just wanted to say, I never thought in our wildest dreams this would happen to us. This was just something that was on the news that we read about or listened to. So, you just never know. And
which is why everybody needs to be motivated, because you're going to be saving yourself. And I'm talking to people who listen. You're going to be saving yourself. This is almost like those science fiction movies where you go into the future to tell yourself something.
Exactly.
Like when the wall cracks, duck.
Yep.
Exactly. So in a way, this is all of us going into the future to tell our present selves, hey, keep the pressure going. All right. So
exactly.
So in the meantime, though, what we've also seen in this case with Nate and his scoliosis and the need for surgery is people and individuals are saying where there's a will, there's a way. And that's the GoFundMe site to help Nate get his needed surgery. But one of the things when you look at it is all who are donating are doing so from the goodness of their heart, and they're doing great things. And that's going to help a young teenager get the necessary surgery so he can grow into a full young man.
We hope.
The insurance company is the one who should be paying. And Fortunately, there's other ways to do things when insurance companies deny claims and try to, basically wiggle out of their obligation. But, they shouldn't be allowed to do that.
Right. So if people have particular questions that they want to direct regarding maybe specifics that aren't covered in the GoFundMe.com/Nate's-surgery, can they send an email to onthefly71@hotmail.com?
They can. That's my email.
Okay.
Nate's father.
All right, cool. All right, so onthefly71@hotmail.com. Okay, Rick, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I figured I wanted to squeeze that in before we had the heartbreak.
Well, it's just, you were talking, Rich, about what can we do, and it really gets down to each state has rules and regulations, and the federal government has rules and regulations and laws. And the more you hear of these personal stories where either families in need go without essential critical health care coverage, or they go bankrupt trying to get it, there's still something wrong with the system, and it needs to be changed to correct those inequities. And I'll go back to, it doesn't matter whether you live in this state or that state. If you have to go someplace else for the necessary medical care, it should be covered, period. Because the entire United States is one country, and as a consumer, you're going to make the best informed decision as to what's necessary for you and your family when it comes to medical care after you consult with your trusted physicians. So the whole out-of-network concept, in my mind, is outdated because of the changes in our country. We're so much smaller because you can get anywhere in a couple hours. You can consult with any doctor by Skype or phone quickly. So these old concepts in the health insurance industry need to be cast aside and new concepts and policies imposed upon them.
All right, so with that, I ask the people listening to rally and start doing what you can to be proactive. And if you can, go visit GoFundMe.com/Nate's-surgery. And that's 1 hour of radio, people. So I thank my panel of guests, especially Jason and Emily. I wish you nothing but success in this endeavor and good health.
Thank you.
And a fast and speedy recovery to Nate. And with that, I will see everyone next week. Keep it here on Taking Care of Business, and we always enjoy the fact that everyone listens and appreciates that. We really do appreciate all the emails and comments that we get. We will see you all.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Whoa.